Hello, thank you for joining us for our Conversations with the Superintendent video series. We are so grateful to have all of our panelists here today and all of you virtually joining us. We are providing today's session in both English and Spanish, and both are available on our district website at district65.net. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Devon Horton.
Hello, District 65 family. This is Superintendent Horton, and today we're going to share some valuable information with you. We understand that this year has presented challenges for many of our students and families, and some more than others. While the appreciation for our educators and staff and all that they are doing is resounding, we continue to hear concerns related to remote learning, mental health, and more. We agree that the best place for students to learn is in the classroom with their teachers. No second guessing that. For our students with individualized education plans or IEPs and their families, the pandemic has caused more significant obstacles in the learning. We're grateful to have reached an agreement with our educators to resume specialized programming as soon as health metrics are met. Currently, we anticipate in-person learning beginning on January 19th. I would like to thank everyone for their continued patience and their persistence as we collectively navigate the most significant public health crisis of our time. Hopefully, this video and many of the other videos in this series will be a useful tool and resource for navigating alternative ways to sustain quality learning here in 65.
Thanks, Dr. Horton. Before we get started, let's take this opportunity for all of our panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Romy DeCristofaro, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
And greetings to the community. I am Tricia Murray, the Assistant Director of Student Services, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hello, I'm Mike Edwards. I'm Assistant Principal at Dawes Elementary School and Head of the Social Work Department, and my pronouns are he, him, his.
And I'm Melissa Messenger. I'm the Director of Communications for the district, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and spending this moment with us as we embark on sharing what's been happening in your respective areas. So let's get started. Dr. DeCristofaro, you are such a tremendous work as you have done such tremendous work as our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. Can you please provide our families with an overview of what your department does and some of the goals you have had in mind in supporting families and students across the district, both in the pandemic and beyond?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Horton. So my department, the Student Services Department, actually includes special education, our multilingual programs, health services, and early childhood. I know today we are focused on the special education side of things, so I'll highlight that. Our department includes all of our special education teachers, paraprofessionals, related service providers such as OTs, PTs, speech language pathologists, social work, psychologists, hearing, vision, adapted PE, and basically any specialized service. We do have some high-level goals that we're working on this year, and all of our educators are working tremendously hard to support our students and families. Despite the many obstacles that we're all experiencing due to the pandemic, I'm proud of the work that we are able to accomplish. Some of our high areas of focus, all with the goal of creating equitable learning environments and improved learning outcomes for our students with disabilities, include a focus on improved inclusive education practices. We are also focusing on co-teaching and universal design for learning, so creating lesson plans in a way that is really differentiated and supportive of all learners. We continue to focus on increasing rigor, and make sure that our IEPs are aligned to grade level standards, and then that instruction is also rigorous and supporting those learning goals as well. And then another big goal that we're working on this year is improving our family partnerships. And I guess that's one positive thing that may be coming out of the pandemic is just a close teacher and home relationship that we've been able to create with many of our school teams as we partner together to support the children who are learning at home. So with just that high level overview, I'll turn it over to my assistant director, Tricia, to share a little bit more about her responsibilities in the department.
Mhm. So I would say that my primary responsibility is to collaborate with building administration and the building teams to really support special education across the district, and more specifically, to provide support for our special programs in 2 of our schools. So Park, Rice, STEP at Lincoln, and then Rise at King Arts. I also attend many IEP and parent meetings, and I'm always available to talk with parents who might have questions about special services or Section 504 plans. And in my role, I also help coordinate staff development for the department and work with others to make sure that our systems are equitable and support high quality programming. So as an example, in terms of staff development this year, as Romy already mentioned, 2 of the areas that we're really focusing on are co-teaching and standards aligned goal writing. And then in terms of our systems, we're really reviewing and updating some of our procedural manuals to ensure that we have strong and consistent practices and that we remain in compliance regarding our obligations for child find, IEPs, and Section 504 plans.
And I'm lucky to not only be an assistant principal at Dawes School, but also the head of the social work department for the district. And under our principal, I lead Dawes educators in providing high quality instruction as far as in addition to a wide range of supports for our school community. And in that role, I get to spend time with families navigating whatever special supports or accommodations or even services that may be needed for students at the building level. And so they would see me most often during IEPs, 504s, as well as any restorative practices conferences. And then of course, the usual day-to-day school happenings. As the head of the social work department in my other role, I spend the majority of my time supporting and developing social workers in the district as they provide the targeted mental health supports and resources for students and families. And so most recently, one good example is we helped coordinate a holiday drive for families who have been negatively impacted by the pandemic.
Thank you for providing us with a more in-depth look into the Student Services Department. It's really comprehensive. It's so important for families to understand your roles, the many ways in which you support our students, and how they can interact with you all. As we get started, I thought it would be helpful if we can share the differences between IEPs and IRLPs.
Mm-hmm. So I think the first important point to make is that IEPs and IRLPs, or remote learning plans, are both individualized plans created to support students who have a disability and therefore need specialized support in order to access the general education and to make progress. They are both legal documents, and they're created in order to make sure that we're providing FAPE to our students. So in other words, a free and appropriate education. Remote learning plans are developed based on the current IEP and really should closely align with IEPs, but they're developed to account for any adaptations that are needed because students are learning using a virtual platform. So remote learning plans are considered temporary plans to ensure that students continue to receive FAPE during remote and blended learning. And typically the plans will provide the same level of service as the IEP, though the delivery of services might look different, or for instance, we might place more emphasis on specific goals or objectives that might be more conducive to remote learning. I think it's also important to share that we're really finding that the parent partnership is even more critical during remote learning. And teams are on a regular basis engaging in problem solving and consultation with our families to make sure that we're supporting engagement and the implementation of services. So we are really, as Romy stated earlier, I'm grateful for this partnership.
Thank you for sharing that. Since the start of the pandemic, I've heard from several parents, we all have, about what should they do if a child is not meeting the goals laid out in their IEP or learning benchmarks for their respective grade level, and how to know that. Dr. Cristofario,
I'm gonna help you out. Dr. DeCristofaro.
Oh, I had an extra letter in there. Thank you.
No problem. I'll take that. So the first line of defense is always, I would encourage parents to go directly to their child's case manager if they have any concerns, or if they're the IEP report cards and regular report cards went home last week. Look at those really closely, along with, it should have come home with a letter that gives a little bit more detail explaining how to analyze the grades and what those mean. But if you have any questions about your child's performance, I would start with going directly to the case manager. And remember, if there are any questions or concerns about how much progress they're making, you can always ask for an IEP meeting at any time. And again, before those IEP meetings, draft paperwork should be going home early to give you time to review and develop some questions. But just be comfortable reaching out and asking your teacher or case manager questions like, how are you tracking my child's progress? And are they on track to meet their goals? If not, what are we going to do about it? How does their performance compare to grade level benchmarks? These are all questions that our educators should be able to answer for you. So that is where I would always direct them to start.
Thank you. That's really informative. The pandemic has created an incredibly challenging situation for so many. What strategies or resources can you share with those families who feel that they are struggling with student engagement and navigating this new virtual education landscape?
Sure. So again, the first line of support is always going to be starting with your child's case manager. And there might be others on the team that you can reach out to, but someone on your child's IEP team will be able to work with you and problem solve any specific areas of concern. And I would just say that what is appropriate and helpful for many of our students who have IEPs is also what is appropriate for all of our students. Work with your team to work with your child to develop a routine and schedule at home. And I would be really thoughtful about making sure that you're building in screen time breaks or movement breaks, going outside to get some fresh air. Again, these are strategies that work for all students. Think about, and maybe this could be something that you work on with your child's team, but think about what subjects require kind of the most energy and thought, because our students tend to do better in the morning, and how can we front load certain activities in the day to be part in the schedule when your child is most alert and ready to work. And then saving those high interest activities for the afternoon. We do have a number of different learning platforms that our educators could talk to you about. Many of our kids are benefiting from online programs like Khan Academy, Zern, ST Math, IXL, Reading A to Z, and there's more. And these are in addition to audiobooks or educational games that we can help find for your kids. But at the end of the day too, just setting out time for your child to read every day is something that is just really, really important. Again, we could go on, and every child is unique. I would just revert you back to your child's team to kind of help you develop any specific strategies that you might need for home.
Okay.
Thanks, Romy. So I've heard you say a couple times that the best line of support is going to their child's case manager, but I think there's sometimes questions about when does it make sense to go to the child's case manager or to go to their teacher, or when they should tap their principal or school-based social worker for some support. Can you share some more insight here on how we're supporting students, the whole child, and really in terms of like mental health and social emotional support as well?
I'm happy to jump in. Thanks, Melissa. So we talk a little bit about a hierarchy of supports, right? And just like we've shared a few times, it's really important that families start with the students or their child's classroom educator first. More often they're already familiar with the concerns or already are working on the answers that you're looking for. And given that, we know that the teacher might have to reach out to the reading specialist or the social worker, speech pathologist, or school psychologists if more information is needed or if it's not quite in their wheelhouse. All District 65 students are eligible to receive social work services when assessed and when that's decided to be appropriate. And so if the student is struggling with the social or emotional concern, or maybe a family member requires some non-academic community support and they just don't know where to look, you can email or call the school social worker and they will be more than willing to help you with some strategies. I think about as a principal or as an assistant principal, right? When a situation involves maybe students from multiple classrooms or even multiple schools, or the nature of your concern is private and you're not quite sure who you should be asking, or maybe you feel like it's a little bit outside of the scope of the teacher, that's where a principal or assistant principal would be willing to jump in. We always are looking for opportunities to connect and support our families. But we also know that the person that spends the most time with your student probably knows your student the most. And so that might be the quickest way. And so if that doesn't work, you know where to find your building principal and assistant principal as well.
Again, I say thank you for sharing such important information and connecting families with individuals in our school-based teams. I know there are concerns about addressing skill regression and learning loss, and how the district will support when the times come for us to transition to in-person learning. Can anyone talk more about that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. So just so you know, while we're remote, our educators are still able to assess student learning, through MAP, other online assessments, and then just the regular day-to-day data collection tools they're using to assess progress towards IEP goals. So we're assessing all the time. But when students do transition back to in-person learning, our educators will thoroughly assess to have a better understanding of the impact that the pandemic and remote learning, if there is any impact to that. And then what we'll be doing is developing what we're calling COVID impact transition plans. Now, it'd be something we would develop collaboratively with our families. And if there is any evidence of learning loss, then what we would be doing is providing some additional support to address that. And that extra support might look like additional services that happens during the school day. It might be after school support and services, or an expansion of our summer learning program as well, just to help kids catch up for anything that was missed during this time.
Thanks, Romy, for sharing more about that. I'm going to switch directions a little bit, but I know that we all really think of parents and caregivers as partners in their child's education. Are there any resources or anything that you would like to share for families who are looking to become more involved or who are looking for that avenue as the way in?
Yes, definitely. And Trish and I are really excited. I don't know when this video will come out, but on December 9th, Wednesday, we do have an introduction meeting for any parents interested in learning more about Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC for short. This is a great opportunity for any parent to get more involved, partner with district leadership on what's important for you, and to help partner with us towards some of our district goals and missions, all for the goal of improving outcomes for students. So if you are not able to attend our December 9th meeting, you can always just email me. The information will also be available on our website, because following this introduction meeting, we will have a parent steering committee that will work this year to hopefully help get this CPAC up and running. So if anyone wants to reach out to me or Trish, we'd be happy to send you that information and see how you can help and get more involved. And yeah, no, we're really looking forward to this. So that is coming soon.
All right. Thank you. This information is really insightful as you provide the resources and tools for our parents and families. Dr. De Cristofaro, I can only begin to imagine the amount of questions that you've received since the start of the school year. Are there any answers that you would like to share? I know that's a really wide question for commonly asked questions that come to mind.
Yeah, there's a few, and I did send out a letter in October with some recently received questions, but I'm happy to kind of highlight a few here. One that we get a lot is, where can I find childcare support? And fortunately, many of our district leaders and social workers put together a really amazing COVID resource guide that's been really helpful in finding low-cost childcare options, or even scholarship opportunities for various programs to support. So that's one where I would direct our families to, because there is a childcare support section on that form. And they have more than just childcare support, but other things like just general aid, food and housing, mental health supports, and more. But like Mike shared earlier, you can also reach out to your social workers, and they've been tremendous at helping connect families with the resources that they need. Another question that we get a lot is, what does a free and appropriate education look like while we are in this remote world? And there is some ISB guidance out there, and I did share that when I sent my letter in October, and you can find it on the ISB website. But just to kind of summarize, the school's responsibility, like always, is to provide FAPE. And that looks different because every child is unique and different, and their circumstances at home are different. But our responsibility as a school is always to partner with families to make reasonable, good faith efforts to provide appropriate support and access during remote learning. And it's, we've run into situations where it's been harder to get some students engaged. And I'll just say that our school teams are committed to continuing to problem solve with families until we are able to find something that will work. So we know that these are challenging times. And again, I will just kind of reiterate back to our team's commitment to supporting you and your students. And then also, when we're hopefully able to transition back, our responsibility is to make sure that we respond appropriately with any supports to address the learning loss that might have happened. The other question that we get a lot is, what will happen to my child's IEP when we come back? Is my IEP still in place? And yes, absolutely. As Trish mentioned when she was going over the difference between IEPs and IRLPs, that individualized remote learning plan is meant to address what learning needs, the needs of your child while you're in remote, but the IEP remains and stays consistent. And that should be rooted in your child's most recent evaluation, the areas that are impacted, goals that are designed to address those impacts. So that IEP stays in place. I would just say that if there is evidence of learning loss when we do come back, it might be that the IEP team would be recommending some additional supports to address any of those needs, or ESY services had they not been eligible in the past. So those would, your IEP is still there. Just know it's our obligation, just like it always is, to respond and make adjustments to that IEP to support your kids. Does anybody else on my team want to share some questions they might be getting?
Well, I think further along the question that you just addressed is that question of like, what are we going to do then about the mental health of our students, knowing that this pandemic has required a lot of changes and a lot of different struggles that our students are not used to, and none of us have really been used to. And so our mental health teams at each school, and that includes our school social worker or workers, and also our school psychologists, will be sure to plan for and kind of support the unique needs of what that return to school does at their own building. And so that could include something like whole class lessons on health and safety and wellness. It also could lead to additional individualized services if your student or your child is really struggling with the change in school location.
I can just say this on behalf of, because I am a parent in the district as well, and not just the superintendent, thanking you all for the work that you've done with your expertise. I feel like we're in really good hands under your leadership. This is truly insightful conversation. Is there anything else that anyone would like to share that we did not mention today?
I would just like to say thank you to our families, because I know that they're often the ones sitting right there next to their child and supporting the lessons and working collaboratively with our educators. So just truly from the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
Absolutely. We thank them for sure. Please feel free to reach out to your school social workers, principals, and assistant principals with any questions that you may have about any of the resources mentioned. Again, this is a great group, and we've been working hard, and we appreciate all of their work, as well as our families and teachers who are supporting us. We look forward to connecting with our families again for our next round of conversation with the superintendent. Thank you for joining us today. Wishing you a safe and productive week. Take care.